You know, we really are fortunate to live here on Delmarva, not just because of the beautiful scenery from the beaches to the bay and everything in between, but also because we've got some really, really unique wildlife.
Yeah, wildlife that depends on our climate to thrive. Take the piping plover, for instance. Each year, as we get closer to spring, we often see the signs, beach closed, to allow these little guys to nest. It's the perfect climate to allow them to thrive. The plover's habitats usually reopen once the season's young birds are able to fly. Our beaches also provide these birds the food they need to prosper. But what if our climate changed? Have you ever thought about what that would do to some of our most treasured wildlife?
Yeah, and not only here, but around the country. A new report sheds light on climate change and the effects it may have on our wildlife. The findings may very well surprise you.
The National Audubon Society released an alarming report, and many are worried.
It's really quite astonishing. What they found is that nearly half of all species in North America are actually imperiled by climate conditions that we have set into motion.
The study claims climate change is the cause, but it will take until 2050 or even 2080 to see the effects.
Seems like a long time to us, but for species that have finally adapted over thousands of years, that's actually a really tight time horizon.
Dr. Steve Beissinger is a professor of conservation biology.
They can move. They can adapt in place, or they can go extinct.
The professor points out that climate change may be good for some birds.
Some of the common ones, like mourning doves, look like they could be favored by climate change.
And this director of the Fish and Wildlife says it's not just about the birds.
Where birds thrive, people prosper. And so as you think about the 2014 State of the Birds report, think about that notion: where birds thrive, people prosper.
Although it'll be half a century before we know if the predictions in the report happen or not, everyone agrees change is coming.
So maybe you're wondering, how many birds are we talking about? Well, the Audubon's climate report states 314 North American bird species could be seriously threatened by climate change by the end of the century. If you'd like to read more about the birds and see what you can do to prevent the change, all you have to do is go to WWOC.com and click on our picture at the top of the page. There's another change that we can expect, this one perhaps a little bit sooner: the colors of fall. The leaves are changing all around us to a beautiful red, orange, and yellow. But why? Well, the phenomenon is the result of chlorophyll. That's the chemical that makes a leaf green, as well as sugars going from the leaves to the trunk of the tree, leaving other colors to be expressed. But every year is different for the rate of change and the vibrancy of the color of the leaves. Experts say the changing of the leaves depends on three factors: sunlight, of course, temperature, and moisture. And this year, there are high expectations.
I anticipate that this will be a very good one, just because of the moisture's back. In the past few weeks, the temperature and nighttime conditions have been perfect.
And pretty soon here, you're going to want to take a tour around Delmarva as the fall colors are expected to peak. But you know, you can enjoy those beautiful fall colors right at home as well. Lisa, it's as easy as giving your green thumb a workout.
Well, Jimmy, a few weeks back, we learned all about mums, but today we're focusing on another fall favorite, dahlias. And we couldn't do it without help from our gardening expert, Ginny Rosenkranz from the University of Maryland Extension Office. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. As always, these are gorgeous. I love dahlias. Something some people may not know, they're actually fall flowers.
They are. Isn't that wonderful? They're tubers, so they actually grow in the ground as a tuber instead of a seed. You can grow them from seed, pardon me, you can do that. But I love the colors. The colors are absolutely gorgeous. And they start actually in the middle of summertime.
Oh, okay.
But now is when they're spectacular.
When they're beautiful. And they come in all different colors and sizes.
Yeah, we have teeny tiny button mums, like little teeny one, to one of these guys right here is going to be what they call dinner plate size.
Oh, okay.
And the colors range from pure white to yellow and pink. Bicolors, like this guy right here is a bicolor. These beautiful dark reds. There's so many colors.
Oh, I love
Rainbows.
them. Is it too late to plant dahlias?
You want to plant dahlias in the early springtime when the soil gets warm, just like a tomato. Because now is when they're flowering, so you want to have them in the ground so they can go ahead and get established. They'll do really well up until frost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about how they do with the sandy soil. we have here.
They love our sandy soil, which is why I love having dahlias in my yard too.
Yeah.
They don't like wet feet, so they need to have good soil, but they need to have well-drained soil, and our sandy soil is definitely well-drained.
And what about shade, sun?
They love full sun, but they actually do okay with a little bit of afternoon dappled shade too, because especially in July, when they start to bloom, that can almost fry the flowers.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about planting them in containers?
They love containers also. Actually, there's different sizes of dahlias. So there's dahlias that are small that would be perfect in containers. And then there are the garden dahlias like these guys that grow really tall, need to be staked if you want them, or they'll sprawl all over the garden.
Okay, so what do we need to do to make sure they come out like this in the fall? What's the upkeep like?
Okay, well, like I say, they're tubers, which means instead of starting them from seed, although you can start them from seed, you actually have a tuber that looks a lot like a sweet potato, and you plant it in the ground when the soil gets warm enough, like it's time to grow tomatoes. And then you keep them watered, but when you plant the tuber, it's a good time to put a stake in, or even a tomato cage if you like that, and that way they'll grow up through that, and then they'll be really gorgeous and stay off of the dirt.
So you probably want to have some distance between them?
They need at least 2 feet. They don't like to be
Really?
real cozy. They like a little bit of space because they get to be really, really large.
Yeah.
And they have to be large for all these gorgeous flowers.
Absolutely. Okay, so I've noticed deer walking into my yard. If I have these beautiful dahlias, are they going to eat them?
You know, some places I've seen that they call them deer resistant. Many places they don't say that they're deer resistant. So I think it depends on the deer and what the population of deer is. I know that sounds very wishy-washy, but I would say that some of the times the deer won't bother them.
So, okay, all right. So you're just taking the chance either way.
Yeah.
And back to planting a little bit. You had mentioned planting them like tomatoes. You said stake them?
Yeah, sometimes they need to be staked, especially the really tall ones that get, you know, they can get 2 to 3 feet tall. And I don't stake mine, but they do sprawl all over the ground, whereas the ones that I've seen in gardens that are spectacular and, you know, look really, really good, they have been staked.
Okay, and what happens to these after the first frost?
Well, what happens after the first frost is, of course, all the flowers go and then the foliage dies down. And that's the point that you want to dig up the tubers, because if you don't, they're tropical and they'll actually freeze and die. So if you dig them up and just wash the soil off and leave them just as is, let them air dry, and leave them in a warm house or a heated garage, then they'll be fine. You can plant them again next spring. Yes.
How about that? I did not know that.
Well, just like gladiolas, you have to do the same thing with glads.
Okay. Good information. Thank you so much, Jenny, as always. And if you would like to learn more about dahlias, visit our website, WBOC.com, and click on our picture at the top of the page. Well, we can't talk fall without talking fall food. You know it's full of flavor, but it can also be fun, filling, and fast. And we're going to show you how. Up next on Delmarva Life, we're learning how to put together a pork green chili postled. It's a meal in a bowl. But first, we want you to see for yourself all the fun we have here in historic Studio D. Come be part of our studio audience. To book your seat, just visit WBOC.com. Click on our picture at the top of the page. Delmarva Life, we'll be right back.